Hello, everyone. Aloha from Hilo, Hawaii. I'm so thrilled to join you online today. My name is Dr. Patsy Iwasaki, and I'm at the University of Hawaii at Hilo. I want to thank you and welcome you to my presentation, Cultural Sustainability and Place-Based Education Through a Graphic Novel in Hawaii, about my graphic novel, Hamakor Hero, A True Plantation Story, that was illustrated by Avery Burrito, who was an art student at the University of Hawaii at Hilo at the time we worked on this together. So let me begin by saying aloha to all of you. Aloha is Hawaiian for hello, hi, good day. It's a greeting, much like hola in Spanish. And let me give you another greeting called the shaka sign. Here we go. A hand gesture of friendship that, like aloha, has many meanings such as hello, right on, thank you, take it easy, all very positive greeting meanings. A gesture that even our 44th president, Barack Obama, who was born and raised in Hawaii, used often to link him to the 50th state of the United States. I'm so fortunate and honored to be able to use technology and the internet to travel thousands of miles away, thousands of kilometers away, all the way from Hawaii to speak with you in Madrid, Spain. Thank you very much to Madrid Complutense University, the Eurasia Foundation from Asia, and to Dr. Asun Lopez Varela for kindly inviting me to share with you. This course seeks to bring diverse perspectives and increase global understanding to many topics with a focus on sustainability and sustainability goals. My topic today focuses on cultural sustainability through the lens of my graphic novel. I am so committed and passionate about cultural sustainability, global education, cross-cultural and multicultural studies, and about building cross-cultural relationships. All of the unsettling events that we have been experiencing over the past years, the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, war and conflict, inflation, crimes against people groups, all of that and more affecting everyone around the world, is truly showing us all that we're more similar than different, and we need to work together. Although we come from many different backgrounds, cities, and countries, and speak many languages, we truly are one human race living on one single planet Earth. And I strongly believe that building relationships, especially multicultural, cross-cultural relationships, such as what we're doing now, is a universal goal that we need to pursue to make this world, our planet Earth, a sustainable, better home for all. My graphic novel, Hamakor Hero, A True Plantation Story, is about Katsugoto, who arrived in Hawaii on the first shipload of Japanese nationals who were recruited to work on the sugar plantations in Hawaii under a government labor agreement between Japan and Hawaii. And he arrived in Hawaii in 1885. Yes, 139 years ago. This cover features a comic book anime representation of Katsugoto, who planted the seeds of justice and labor rights in the hard soil of Hawaii's plantation society many years ago, 139 years ago. I'll be discussing migration to Hawaii from Japan through the lens of Katsugoto, and he worked on the sugar plantations. I'm going to share more about the setting of Hamakor Hero, the history, the background of migration to Hawaii, focusing on Japan and Hawaii in context and through the lens of this graphic novel. Since most of the sugar plantations closed over 30 years ago, it's been 1, 2, or more generations since sugar once dominated these islands, and many in Hawaii either have no knowledge about the sugar plantations or have forgotten. Teachers in Hawaii have told me that by using Hamakua Hero, their students have a greater understanding of how Hawaii became a multicultural society and how their family might have migrated to Hawaii to settle and build a life. I'll also discuss cultural perspectives in the development of the cover of the graphic novel and representations of culturally relevant and sustainable education in the graphic novel. So let's begin. This morning, I had a cup of coffee, and perhaps you did too. Or you had a coffee right before this class as a pick-me-up. I like mine with a lot of cream, and if you're like me, you also add a sweetener, honey or sugar. And that's why I've included this slide of a very nicely decorated coffee, sugar. Sugar is what brought Katsugoto, the main character of my graphic novel, to Hawaii in 1885, 139 years ago. The production of sugarcane and its tremendous need for labor created the multicultural society we have in Hawaii today. So I'm going to start by explaining why we have this multicultural society in Hawaii, including people like myself, Japanese Americans. My graphic novel, Hamakua Hero, begins with this scene of Waikiki today. Most of you may already know that Waikiki is a famous beach resort area on Oahu with many hotels. The narrator of the story is Katsugoto's younger brother, Sekijiro, and he invites the reader into the story by saying, "Aloha, welcome. Today, there are over 1 million people of diverse cultures living in thriving communities in the 50th state of America. It is a place of commerce, tourism, industry, and technology. Many are drawn to the tropical allure of paradise, Hawaii." And this is a photo of Waikiki Beach during the July 4th canoe races in 2019. Yes, this was taken before the pandemic, but it's really starting to look like this again because all restrictions have lifted and tourists are returning to Hawaii. It has or will soon return to the pre-pandemic levels of 30,000 plus visitors arriving into Hawaii each day. And even West Maui on Maui Island, which was devastated in the wildfires last August, which you might have heard, depends on tourism and is working its on ways to slowly open up to tourism in phases. So Sekijiro continues in the graphic novel. Some things never change. It was the same over many years ago when thousands left behind their family, friends, and homelands for these islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. As many do today, they wanted to live in paradise. Let me tell you a story from long ago that is very dear to my heart. In paradise. I included these slides today to point out that this phrase, in paradise is meant to be a little ironic or satirical. It's an image and fantasy, a perspective about Hawaii, now and in the past. While some might romanticize this period in Hawaii history, if you are able to someday read Hamakua Hero, you will find out that plantation society in Hawaii was not at all a paradise. Not only Hamakua Hero, but if you read other sources about the plantation society and the plantation era. Early on in the graphic novel, we see that it's definitely not a paradise, and for Goto, he, and I'm giving you a spoiler alert, was unfortunately lynched and killed for helping sugar plantation workers. Yes, Goto was ambushed and hung on a telephone pole on October 28, 1889, for being a champion for sugar plantation worker rights and dignity. I want to be clear that Hawaii wasn't a paradise in the past, and it's not a paradise today. Of course, Hawaii is a fantastic location in the world, but when you only focus on the palm trees, the beaches, and Waikiki and the resort areas, it's easy to overlook the many issues and problems we face today. This is important because, you are all very clever college students. So you have to look at things more critically, think more critically, look at the broader picture. That's why you're here, receiving an education. So yes, Hawaii has often been portrayed as a paradise, but if you look deeper, it's not a paradise. Environmental, social, economic, and political instability and hopes for a better life pushed residents out of their own countries to America and to Hawaii in the past. And for Hawaii, the need for workers on the sugar plantations pulled migrants to the islands. The same factors that push people to move out of their country are the same factors that pull people to come into a new country in the past and also today. So environmental, social, economic, political are the push factors, and the same factors are the pull factors as well. This is why many states in the United States, and especially in Hawaii, have a diverse population with migrants from Asia, Europe, and the Pacific. Immigrants were in the past, as they are today, seeking sustainable futures through migration. How about Spain? What people groups are migrating to Spain or to Madrid? The next part of Hawaii history has interesting connections to Japan. King David Kalakaua was the reigning monarch in the Kingdom of Hawaii from 1871 to 1891. In 1881, King Kalakaua traveled all around the world, to Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. His travels brought the small island nation to the attention of world leaders, but also sparked rumors that the kingdom was for sale. The Hawaiian monarchy was trying their best to navigate their kingdom amid larger powers in the world who wanted control over the islands. So that sparked the rumors that the islands were for sale. During this time period, King Kalakaua also visited Japan for 2 weeks. Many say he was trying to deflect American ambitions towards Hawaii and possibly place Hawaii under the Empire of Japan's protection. So he proposed a marriage between his niece, Crown Princess Kailani, and Prince Higashi Fushimi Yorihito. While the proposal fell through, it's interesting to think about the possibilities if Hawaii had come under Japanese rule. And in addition to being the first king to circumnavigate the world, King Kalakaua's global tour had a very important economic purpose. He was being pressured by plantation owners to find additional inexpensive labor sources for the extremely lucrative and successful sugar industry. Remember I talked about sugar at the beginning? This industry was booming, so successful in Hawaii. Here is King Kalakaua seated in the middle with Japanese officials to the left and to the right. Standing in the back are members of the king's delegation. Growing, harvesting, and processing sugarcane was very labor intensive. This immigrant labor force that was successfully recruited from Asian countries such as China, Japan, Korea, the Philippines, and the Pacific is what created the multicultural society of Hawaii that we have today. But there were also Europeans. In fact, over 25,000 Portuguese nationals, mostly from Madeira and the Azores, but some from mainland Portugal, were recruited for the sugar plantations starting in 1878. And this part should be very interesting to you. There were also 8,000 migrants from southern Spain, from Andalusia, who worked on the sugar plantations from 1907 to 1913. In fact, and something I learned very recently was that 2,246 migrants were from Malaga and arrived in Honolulu in 1907 from the British ship SS Heliopolis. And this book is titled The 1907-1913 Spanish Immigrants to Hawaii. And for most of these Spanish migrants, Hawaii was a gateway, and most, if not all, eventually ended up settling in California. So we do have that in common. And what's interesting is that in the last several years in Hawaii, there's been increased migration from Latin American countries. and those people that are coming are speaking Spanish. So I'm hearing Spanish being spoken, even in Hilo, on my island. So why was the sugarcane industry so lucrative for the sugar barons in Hawaii? Why did it make so much money for them? The Civil War, which battled the northern states against the southern states of America from 1861 to 1865, had prevented the supply of sugar from the southern United States to the northern states. And the Reciprocity Treaty of 1875 was a free trade agreement between the United States and the Hawaiian Kingdom. And at this time, Hawaii wasn't part of the United States. So the US would have to charge taxes on the sugar being imported to the US mainland continent. However, because of the Reciprocity Treaty, taxes were not charged, and that meant greater profit for the sugar plantation owners. But Hawaii needed to give something back. And what they gave back to the United States were two things. One, economic and business privileges in Hawaii, and two, Pearl Harbor. The United States realized very early that Pearl Harbor was an ideal military location in the Pacific. Many countries were interested in gaining political and economic access to the Hawaiian Kingdom, and they tried to do so through imperialism and colonization. Countries such as Russia, England, and especially the United States were interested in Hawaii. And as you can see from this map, the Hawaiian Islands are in a very strategic location in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And the United States did succeed. A military base was established at Pearl Harbor on Oahu in 1887 and became the most important American naval base in the Pacific and home to the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Another success for the United States came a few years later. A group of American sugar barons and businessmen successfully overthrew the Hawaiian monarchy with a coup. The overthrow of Hawaii's last queen, Queen Liliuokalani, came in 1893. A year later, in 1894, the Republic of Hawaii was established under President Sanford Dole, one of the leaders of the coup. And 4 years later, in 1898, Hawaii was annexed to the United States as an incorporated territory. I'm not sure if you see it in the supermarket, but Dole pineapple, the brand Dole pineapple is very, very popular in the United States. And you still see it. They are one of the biggest producers of pineapple still. At first glance, you can understand why so many Japanese and other migrants from Asia would want to emigrate to Hawaii. Japan and other economies were in a recession, rice harvests were poor, and labor recruits were second or third sons, so they wouldn't inherit the family land. So over 370,000 Japanese residents, had to sell their properties to pay taxes during several years of poor rice harvests between 1883 and 1890. So an economic crisis in Japan pushed many Japanese out of their country to seek, economic relief elsewhere. And for the Japanese, after being isolated for over 200 years, many caught what was called Tobei Netsu, or abroad fever, meaning going to the continental United States or the West. Or they called it Hawaii fever. It wasn't a physical illness, but a fever to see what's out there beyond Japan. Recruiters advertised fields of gold and get rich quick dreams and schemes, actually. In this page, of the graphic novel, Katsu's father asks Katsu if he has Hawaii fever. As an employee of the city, Katsuzo Kobayakawa, son of Izaemon and Sayo, learned of the government contract labor agreement between Japan and Hawaii. Father, I have a chance to go to Hawaii. I've learned some English at the port of Yokohama, and the government is signing people up as kanyaku imin, which means translated to first ship immigrants. That's what the group was called. What? Dekasegi, which means to seek work abroad. Are you still caught up in the foolish Hawaii netsu that's gripping everyone? Hawaii fever. Foolish? Mother's waiting. No talk of this to her until after Oshogatsu, which means New Year's, the New Year's holiday. She needs your help. I want her to enjoy this time. So, however, the reality for those first Japanese immigrants was definitely not fields of gold, but rather extremely poor living conditions and a labor contract with meager pay, working for 26 days a month, 10 hours a day, consisting of several years of back-breaking, labor-intensive work, clearing the land, digging ditches, planting, fertilizing, weeding, and harvesting cane. And sugar cane is very dangerous because they have sharp edges to their long leaves. And so you can easily get, very, very, very hurt. You can get your hands bloodied and cut. So you really need to wear gloves. There were 26 shiploads of contract laborers under the agreement with King Kalakaua and the Hawaiian Kingdom. By 1924, there were over 200,000 Japanese nationals in Hawaii from many prefectures. And as this photo shows, many women labored in the fields as well. And so they had to wear, gloves as well because of the sharp leaves. So Katsugoto arrived in Hawaii in 1885 on the first shipload of Japanese nationals who were recruited to work on the sugar plantations in Hawaii under the government labor agreement between Japan and the Kingdom of Hawaii. Goto was sent to Ookala Plantation along the Hamakua coast near the town of Honoka'a on Hawaii Island. And that district is, I've labeled it in red on this slide. Thus, the title of the graphic novel is named after the region. And so now I'm going to go directly into probably another question that you have. Why a graphic novel? Why use this genre, this medium? And graphic novels are literature. They are indeed literature, and they do an excellent job of spreading awareness and understanding of multiple topics, from learning how to change oil in a car. Yes, there was a graphic novel about that in Japan that I actually saw. How to change oil in a car, a graphic novel about that. To serious topics such as race relations, migration, and environmental humanities. The graphic novel genre can cover deep, serious topics like this. And the graphic novel that brought recognition to the genre was Mouse by Art Spiegelman about the Holocaust. And it was about mice and rats and cats as the people in Germany at that time. And my understanding of the difference between graphic novels and comics is that graphic novels have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. They can stand alone as a novel in visual and text form. And comics often leave you with a cliffhanger that is meant to continue in a series. At first, I wanted to write perhaps an academic book. But I wanted to share this story with more people, and I wondered how many people would actually read an academic book. Let me give you an example from my doctoral dissertation committee. One of the professors on my committee told a story about how when he graduated, his dissertation was published and bound in a book and placed on in the library on a shelf there. But before, he left, the university, he had put $20 in that dissertation publication in the middle. And he wrote a note saying, if anyone reads this book, this dissertation, comes across this $20 bill, please take it. It's a gift. And then he went on to say that 10 years later, he went back to his alma mater, to his college, and went to the library and looked up his dissertation on the shelf, and he opened it up, and guess what? The $20 was still there. So in a way, sometimes that's not the best way to get the word out. There's few people that might be reading it. So then I thought, okay, maybe a watercolor, maybe an artistic watercolor book. But at the time, my kids, a daughter and a son, were very young, and trying to make them read any book for school was difficult, so difficult. It was like going to the dentist or getting a COVID vaccination shot. But at the time, they loved comic books and would spend hours at the bookstore devouring comics. I would let them buy one comic book each after we spent hours there. So they took hours to decide. They loved Naruto, One Piece, Bleach, and others. And One Piece is so popular all around the world that Netflix has a live action series now. So my husband, Alan, suggested that I should do a graphic novel. Why not use this genre to tell Goto's story? And so I did. In addition to the history of Japanese migration to Hawaii, I now want to talk about how culture and heritage can be viewed from interesting and diverse and different perspectives. And so a group of youth were so instrumental in helping me develop the cover of Hamakua Hero. This was an informal focus group that ranged in age from young elementary students to preteen and teens, composed of both local Hawaii youth and native Japanese. I also had several adults. I showed them a couple of sketches of early Hamakua Hero possible covers, and one of them was this one. Avi Burrito, the illustrator, came up with this draft among many others, including one with a volcano for Hawaii Island, one with a Japanese red gate, the Japanese red torii gate, and other images, images that I felt were connected to both Hawaii Island and Japan. We sort of threw everything out there in different combinations that we could think of. And I want to point out that the first Japanese English version printed in Japan was titled Hidden Hero, because I felt that his Hawaii Island story was hidden, not well known at all back then. And even today, it's not well known. So what do you think of this cover? What are some of your thoughts when you see this? Please think about this for a short time. And if we were meeting face to face, I would be able to hear back from you about your ideas and have a discussion with you. But since I can't, I'm going to go ahead and discuss, what others have said about this, and especially my focus group. So we played with the idea of connecting Goto to the Japanese samurai, which I associated as a traditional Japanese hero. Cherry blossoms were also added because they're a quintessential symbol of Japan, right? But the local youth in my focus group, liked the samurai idea somewhat, but not the shadow aspect of it. It looked too ominous, too dangerous, they said. And what I learned from the Japanese youth was so surprising and interesting. Perhaps it was my looking at Japanese culture from a Western Japanese American perspective, but I learned that the Japanese youth completely didn't associate samurai as being a hero in that Western sense. They felt that samurai was something in the legendary past and that they couldn't really relate to that concept. To them, a hero was someone real, someone they could watch on TV, an Olympic gold medalist, a Japanese baseball star like Ichiro Suzuki and Shohei Ohtani, who have made it in the American major baseball leagues, or someone like Hideki Matsuyama, an international golf star who won the Masters in 2021. So they didn't like the samurai shadow at all. They also didn't like the cane knife. They felt it was pretty ominous and dangerous as well. I'm sorry about the noise from the dog, our dog. um, Older Japanese youth and adults also didn't like the cherry blossoms. I asked them if it was an image that was too stereotypical, and they said that although they love cherry blossoms and the short cherry blossom viewing season, to see it like this made them associate the images with the past, with the emperor and Japan's imperialism and the military. The short life. Okay, Ash. Okay, Ash. Ash is the name of my dog. So they equated the short life of the cherry blossom was associated with the short life of a Japanese soldier during the war, during World War II. And so they didn't relate it to today. But both the Japanese and local Hawaii youth really liked the figure of Katsugoto. They liked how he looked upward as if with hope and a dream. And he was someone they wanted to learn and know more about. They also liked the stalk of sugarcane. It sort of stood up to them, even if it was in the corner, off to the side. So after a couple of more iterations, I removed the samurai image, the knife, the cherry blossoms, and settled on this. The cover with a focus of a youthful Katsugoto looking up and beyond, filled with hope and dreams in the middle of a sugarcane field. And I'm so glad how it turned out. Now let's turn to representations of culture, especially Japanese culture, in the graphic novel. I'll feature some of the representations of culture and cultural values in broad terms, which includes the arts, heritage, knowledge, beliefs, customs, social behavior, societal norms, family norms, and other manifestations of a people group. There are several pages that feature the New Year's holiday, which was and still is Japan's most celebrated holiday with over a week of vacation when businesses, offices, and schools are closed. Many people groups feature cultural representation through food. Japanese families serve a lot of traditional foods for the new year that have auspicious meaning for good luck, long life, and wishes for a good year. On the top panel is a display of two large mochi rice cakes, one on top of the other, with a small bitter orange on top, which could be a tangerine. This display is called kagami mochi, translated to mirror rice cake. The two mochi discs are supposed to symbolize the outgoing year and the incoming year, the human heart, yin and yang, or the moon and sun. The bitter orange, called the dai, which means generations, is said to symbolize the continuation of a family from generation to generation. And again, I wish I could hear about your representations of culture through food. How do you celebrate New Year's, birthdays, holidays? What kinds of food do you celebrate with? There are at least two social and cultural constructs that I wanted to introduce on this page. One is the consumption of alcoholic drinks, in this case, sake, rice wine, which plays an important societal role in many cultures to celebrate, an event, a person. And as research explores too, it could be a symptom of oppression and colonization. I also depict gambling on another page. But the second important, uh, social construct that's on this page is the importance of the male gender in many cultures throughout the world, including Asian and Japanese culture. They are congratulating the birth of a son with the emphasis of Boys' Day, which is celebrated on May 5. And in 1948, the holiday was renamed Children's Day in an effort to be more gender inclusive, but it's still sort of considered a festival for boys. Um, I wish I could hear from you about this topic as well, and we could have a discussion. Arranged marriage is another cultural construct of many societies. Here on page 12 of the graphic novel, Katsugoto's mother is trying to arrange a marriage for him through a friend. Katsu, now that the New Year's holiday is over, I have something I need to talk to you about. Remember Mrs. Nakayama from the church ladies group? She has a niece. Look, isn't she pretty? She's 18 years old, very smart, did well in school, and helps take care of her grandparents. She's a hard worker and is never sick. Mrs. Nakayama told her parents that you have a good job and you're the oldest son. You need to start thinking about settling down and your own kekkon-shiki, which means wedding. And most of the early Japanese migrants to Hawaii were single men, and they wanted to marry Japanese women. Although the picture brides industry took place almost 20 years after the events of this story, in the interest of storytelling and to honor the women who came to Hawaii as picture brides, I included a few pages about them. The term picture brides was the practice of arranged marriages between Japanese men in Hawaii and young Japanese women in Japan through pictures, through photographs. But sometimes the photos of the men were taken years earlier. So these young 17, 18-year-old girls were sometimes married to men old enough or sometimes even older than their fathers. I wanted to recognize these women because they were absolutely essential to the settling of the Japanese immigrants in Hawaii and the building of families and communities. Although they couldn't own land, their children born in Hawaii could become US citizens and own property. So the women were so important. They were the game changers for the Japanese community. And the early photo of the woman's husband and how he looks like over there, with the cute heart, adds a bit of humor to this very real occurrence. So Katsugoto is talking to this woman in his store. Oh, he's really a good man. Yes, but so old. Nothing like the picture he sent me. Maybe he is a little older than this photograph, but this looks like it was taken 20 years ago. Haha. And there's an error right there. He's really a good man. It's supposed to be a good man. This practice of arranged marriages, of obtaining a bride across countries, is not just something that happened in the past, but it's still happening today in many countries. And often, or sometimes, it can be a very logical arrangement, and they are can be very successful. Page 28 features an example of a cultural and economic construct that the Japanese community in Hawaii created out of necessity. No banks in Hawaii at the time would lend money to immigrant Japanese. So groups of people, usually men, pooled their money together to provide loans to each other in the group. And these groups were called Tanomoshi. Another cultural and economic practice that many people in all cultures utilize is the opening of a business to make that jump in social and economic standing in a community. Katsugoto did the same. He arrived in Hawaii as a sugar plantation laborer. He did the hard work in the sugarcane fields. And after 3 years, he opened up a general store thanks to a permit Onome had transferred to him. And his business did very well. So he was a liaison between the Japanese laborers and plantation management at Overland Plantation. He advocated for improved working conditions and wages. He facilitated mediation. He served as the interpreter. When the workers had problems, they sought his help, and he was a community leader. But even more than his business, because he could speak English, he became the mediator between Japanese plantation workers and management. And next and last, we must include the culture of lynching. The next 2 pages might be quite graphic, so I want to give you a warning. Here's a depiction of the ambush and attack upon Katsugoto according to court reports and interviews. Burrito did such a good job of conveying the movement, action, and violence to the scene. And in the court trial records, the defendants said that Goto kept saying, "Pau, Pau," P-A-U, P-A-U, which means done or finished in Hawaiian. I think it was his way of saying stop, stop. So I really wanted to add that as authentic dialogue from Goto. Although lynching was not common in Hawaii at the time, in fact, I'm not aware of another lynching in Hawaii. It was a common social and political construct popular in the world. And in the United States, it was an act of terror often towards Black Americans in the South. And Goto's eyes, as you can see, are shaded in black to depict death in the anime style. Dr. Gary Okihiro, American history scholar and author of many books about Asians and Pacific Islanders, said, a lynching is not a murder, not an execution. It is an act of terror. It is to teach the living a lesson, and that's why bodies were left. It was a lesson for those who ruled that they were in power and control, and it was a lesson for those who were subjected to rule, that they should not cross that line or aspire to be equal to those who rule. That's a very harsh lesson, and that is terrorism. You inspire fear on the part of those dominated, and to be quiet, to listen, to agree with the rulers. Here's the only known photo of Katsugoto. He was just 27 years old when he was killed on October 28, 1889. And this photo was likely taken a short time before he was killed, before he was lynched, killed, and hung on a telephone pole for being a champion for sugar plantation worker rights and dignity. Although his death was a terrible tragedy, it marked an early turning point for the organization of plantation labor and the eventual establishment of labor unions in Hawaii. What a distinctive mustache he has, right? Now he is being honored and remembered for his courage and action. And I'm utilizing his story as a culturally relevant educational resource that can sustain culture and encourage resilience. This comes to the end of my presentation. I want to end with this photo of the last sugar plantation in Hawaii, which was Alexander and Baldwin's Hawaiian Commercial and Sugar Company that closed down in 2016 in Pu'unene, Maui. That's Maui Island. Most of the sugar plantations in Hawaii had already closed down in the 1990s or earlier. My graphic novel has Katsugoto in the middle of the cane fields, and I'm ending with this photo of these sugarcane fields. Which brings us back to where we started. Sugar. right? That sweetener that you put into your coffee or tea this morning. So the next time you use sugar, remember that sugar is what brought Katsugoto and so many other migrants to Hawaii and created the multicultural community that we have in Hawaii today. Thank you so very much for your kind attention and for the wonderful talk that we were able to have today. It was, I really appreciate your attention. Mahalo nui loa, which means thank you very much. Thank you very much. Goodbye.